Hare Parents' Day, and I usually do a program at home, but we haven't done it for the last few years just due to health and this and that and the other. So I said to my wife Tuesday, I think it was, or maybe Monday, I said, it'd be nice maybe this year we do a program. She said, let's think about it. And then we got a nice call from Kim Centriton. She said, I was thinking we could, so okay, bingo. Everything arranged by Narottam's grace. So, we're, myself, I don't know about all of you, but I'm just a servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of Narottam here, trying to get a little understanding. When I was a kid, like these boys' ages, the older boys, I was really into biographies. At the time, they had a series of books out. What were they? Some kind of like a middle teenage book. What do they call it? Young adult books is the genre now. I forget what we called them. It was all about Elliot Ness and his G-Men, which was the FBI at the time, and their efforts against the Chicago gangsters of the 1940s. And it was biographies on all of these people. Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd. So I knew the histories of all these guys. And Elliot Ness and all. I studied all this stuff. I knew all of them. I could tell you this, that, and the other. Big waste of time, but at any rate, that was it. And then when I got a bit older, I transitioned into the lives of the great composers, all the classical composers. Handel's Messiah, most people think this is a very big religious work. For him, he had been engaged in an affair with a married woman, and the husband found out and challenged him to a duel and shot him, but he used to keep a pocket Bible in his vest pocket, and the bullet hit that, saving him. So his revelation was to write Handel's Messiah. So, a lot of that kind of useless information. But then, 1983, maybe 84, I came across a cassette tape. Some of you may not even know what cassette tapes are. 8-track cassette, what was it then? CDs, now it's all online. At any rate, and it was one of my godbrothers who had lived in Bengal for quite some time, speaking the entire life of Narottam Das Thakur. And I was just like, I was smitten. And so that was my first introduction to the Vaishnava Acharya biographies. And I was like, okay, this is it. At that time, Rupa Vilas Prabhu was living in Long Island. I was in Brooklyn Temple at the time. And so every appearance or disappearance day, I would pay for his fare in on the train, come in and talk about Haridas Thakur, come in and talk about Rupa and Sanatan or whatever. So I have recordings, cassette recordings of all those lectures. And so that was my beginning foundation of getting into the Vaishnava Acharyas. And of course, Narottam Das Thakur was the first one I became familiar with. And I listened to that tape 100 million times. I memorized every single influx in his voice and, excitement. And I had it all down. It was like a parrot. Which, in one sense, people would say, no, when you do something, you want to add your flavor. But the advantage of being a parrot is you're reciting just exactly as you heard it, and it's wonderful. So at any rate, that was my beginning like this. So at that same time, I was worshiping a Nisringa Shila. This Nisringa Shila was given to ISKCON. You've all heard the story about my Raghunath Shila. At the same time as that Raghunath Shila. This Shila had been worshipped in the Parthasarthi Mandir in Chennai for the last 1,500 years and given to ISKCON to be taken care of, and came into my care. Now, I've had, over the years, many a sannyasi try and convince me to give them this Nisringa Shila, that I'm a householder, very fierce Ugra, which I shouldn't be worshiping as a householder, but I was a little stubborn, very attached. So at any rate, 2000, I had an epiphany that it was time for me to find a new home for him. But I hadn't said anything to anybody. So 2000, was it 2001? 2001, we went to Vrindavan for Kartik. And this was way before Narottam Swami's big Kartik parikrams and this and that. He didn't even have a place. He was just staying in somebody's flat there in the MDT, which happened to just be a short distance from ours. And so I hooked back up with him. He and I had known each other briefly from some time in Brooklyn in the early 80s. So I went over every morning, was chanting japa with him. We had this wonderful thing. We'd sit down in 16 rounds straight in a row. Then we would do whatever the rest of the day, sometimes go to Govardhan. I've been trying to figure out what. So I mentioned to him one day that I wanted to do this. And he said, you know, he was very, very grateful. And he said, I'd like to reciprocate with you. I said, this isn't a business deal. I said, it's just a gift, you know, it's time for him to, you know. So at any rate, the next day when I came for japa, he said to me, he said, I have a surprise for you. But we're going to wait till our japa's done. So that was the most intense 16 I've ever chanted in my life. But when we finished, he said, I know of your attraction for the Vaishnavacharyas and I know how attached you are to Narottam. I happen to have these 3 Shilas that will worship for Narottam before. I'd like to give them to you. So that transfer was made, him getting the Nrsimha Shila and me receiving Narottam's deities. Now the question obviously is, well, how? Where? So when Narottam was spending some time in Vrindavan and then back to Bengal, in Bengal somehow he acquired the details are not very known at all. Sital and I have discussed this many, many times, but apparently he had 8 Shilas that he carried around his neck. 4 Govardhan Shilas, 3 Shalagrams, and a Dwarka. And then when the deities of Braj Mohan were transferred from Bengal in the temple there at Katuri to Vrindavan, the Shilas came with them. So they were on the altar at the Braj Mohan temple in Vrindavan. Now, the Braj Mohan temple in Vrindavan for decades had been in much neglect, very bad disrepair. And it wasn't very well kept up. And so Narottam Swami took it upon himself to gather funds from a handful of very well-to-do disciples and renovate that whole temple to the state we see it now. And so the Pujari there became very, very appreciative of his efforts and wanted to give him something and gave him 3 of the Shilas of Narottam. One of the Govardhans, one of the Shalagrams, and the Dwarka. And those are the 3 that Maharaj gave to me, and that's how they come to be sitting right here in front of us today. So, how and when they came to Vrindavan has been something Sitala and I have tried for quite some time to figure out, but the history is just too lost. So it's not really known. But and then just to the right of the deities, there's the picture of Narottam in his old age. This picture is drawn from a deity of him that is in Bengal. And then, of course, Srila Prabhupada, Chaitanya, and Tulsi Devi there. So we've been very fortunate and tried to take care of them as best as we can. After a little time today, we'll all do an Abhishek here for him, get the bathing like that. So that's the history. Sure. Oh, yeah.
It's a letter from Narottam Swami to Mother Pashupati. Dear Mother Pashupati, please accept my most humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. In a recent letter, your husband mentioned to me your apprehension about having the deities of Srila Narottam Das Thakur in the house because of a fear they could be offended. I don't think you should be in anxiety about this. The very nature of the deities are that they are benevolent. Srila Prabhupada often referred to the deities as the Lord's mercy incarnation. Of course, we have to be aware of and careful to avoid offenses. But even if we make some mistakes, if they are not intentional, they are generally forgiven. Srila Prabhupada's main instructions in deity worship were to make sure that everything is clean and punctual. If that is there, and we try to serve the deities with as much devotion as we have, they are happy. They come to us by their own arrangement. It wouldn't be proper to feel uncomfortable with their presence. Deity worship is especially meant for householders. Householders should have deities. The worship keeps everything simple and pure in the household. and Shaligram Shilas are traditional deities for Brahmana Grihasthas. No doubt the deities of Narottam are very special, so make a few special arrangements for them and your service will be appreciated by them. But actually, any and all deities that you have in your household are special. They are Krishna himself. It's a wonderful opportunity to serve the Lord personally. That's the very goal of our devotional service, and you are fortunate as a family that the Lord has blessed you with his presence in so many ways. In conclusion, the Lord comes of his own will, and though we should never feel ourselves qualified, we should accept this service, his service. The deity is the mercy incarnation, the benevolent friend who comes to inspire us. Keep everything simple, clean, and pure. That's all that he expects. If we don't consciously make offenses, our mistakes are tolerated by him. Deity worship keeps us focused in Krishna consciousness. I hope this is helpful. Your servant, Indradyumna Swami.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
She had no more apprehensions after that. And they've happily, I guess I can say happily, at any rate, they've stayed with us for the last 24 years now. Sometimes, it's the deities, they can't go anywhere, they can't give it, but that's really the mood of the atheist. We know from the story of Shakshi Gopal, if the deity wants to go somewhere, he'll go somewhere. So we always used to say that the deities, they come and go of their own accord. This is how Prabhupada described them. So they've stayed with us all this time, so we hope that our humble efforts to serve them have been satisfying and accepted. The real question is, as we get towards the other end of life, what's going to happen to them where we're going? So we're presently waiting to see if any of our kids showing interest, but that's a whole other chapter. So, all right, so I've been asked to speak about Narottam this evening, since he's the original Vaishnavacharya that I took a liking to. And I thought that we could kind of do a little analysis, if you will, of the work Sri Narottam Astakam by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I did this for his discipline estate in Kartik in Vrindavan. It was quite well liked. So the first thing we might want to look at is why Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur? What's his connection to Narottam? And what is the reason that he's writing such a thing as this? So, from our side as Vaishnavas and as followers of Mahaprabhu, we refer to Narottam Das Thakur often as Rasikaraj, the topmost, the king of all those devotees who relish pure mellows of devotional service. Now, as we know from his life, the challenges against the Smarta Brahmanas, against the strict caste conscious, we could even say body conscious Brahmanas, is that Narottam was unqualified for everything he did, because he was from Kayastha family. His father was a king, basically a mayor, we might say in modern language, and was responsible for this district, and he was the son. And so, him becoming a Brahmin, taking up with the Brahmanas, getting initiated about all of these different things, and then in turn giving this to others, was, by those who were very caste conscious, was not accepted. So they, on the other hand, they had a different name that they would describe Narottam. And this was not an immediate, although he met much opposition, even up to the end of his life, much opposition, and always conquered everyone with his presentation. But up at the time of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he was commonly referred to as Sahajya Kulabhushana, the ornament of that family of cheap imitators. So this was the Sahaja description, the offensive Smarta Brahmana's description. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who was the disciple of Radharaman Chakravarti, who was the disciple of Krishna Charana Chakravarti, who was the direct disciple of Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, whose name we all recognize, who was the dearmost disciple of Narottam Das Thakur. So we see this connection. Narottam, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, Krishna Charana Chakravarti, Radharaman Chakravarti, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So this is the connection to Narottam. So he felt, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that he had an obligation to establish Narottam's true position, to establish the deep philosophical and spiritual connection and understanding of who Narottam was and what his great position was. So to this point, he established this writing, Sri Narottam Astakam, 8 verses describing the glories of Narottam. So these 8 verses are very, very wonderful. And we live in an amazing time, you know. I mean, everything, I've probably got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of files on Acharyas in here. This gives me access to all of Srila Prabhupada's books, all on a little 8x10 half-inch platform, you know. So, I mean, yes, it's Kali Yuga, and yes, it's a horrible time, but at the same time, we have such great opportunities for our own spiritual development. So, the first verse, what we're going to do, Prem and I decided, is we'll do 3 verses, we'll do a little kirtan, then we'll do 3 more verses, then we'll do the Abhishek, then we'll do 3 more verses, and then we'll take prasad. So we'll kind of mix it up this evening. No one gets tired very quickly of hearing Chadaratma go on and on. We'll keep it short. So Sri Narottam Astakam by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Sri Krishna Namamrita Varshi Vaksha Chandra Bhavavasta Dhano Varaya Gauranga Devana Charaya Tasmai Namo Namah Srila Narottamaya. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a sincere follower of Lord Gauranga Dev, emanating a shower of the nectar of the holy name. With its splendor, the moon of his mouth destroys the darkness of ignorance. So, first off, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur does the appropriate thing and offers his respects to the personality he's about to speak on, namely Narottam. And then he gives a wonderful description of him. He describes him as a sincere follower of Lord Gauranga Dev. Now we know from the life of Advaita Acharya had 6 sons, 3 of which are considered in the line of Mahaprabhu, and 3 of which are considered not in the line of Mahaprabhu, having not embraced the teachings of their father, Advaita Acharya. So one could say, well, they're all 6 sons of Advaita Acharya, but here a distinction is made, a sincere follower of Lord Gauranga Dev. Now we can understand that from a couple of points of view. One is that he embraced Mahaprabhu's instruction to always chant the holy name. But more important than that, we can see that he sincerely took up that effort of Mahaprabhu to spread Sri Harinam Sankirtan everywhere, to anyone and everyone. He made no distinction. Mahaprabhu himself made no distinction. He gave the holy name to everyone he met in any condition. He didn't request, are you physically able, are you intellectual, are you a Brahmana, are you this, that, or the other. What's that story? The one Brahmin he met in South India. The Brahmin couldn't read, was completely illiterate, but every day he's holding the Bhagavad Gita. Some stories say he was holding it upside down even, and looking at it, and all of his local friends, they would tease him, "Oh, Brahmin, what are you reading?" "You fool, you can't read anything." So Mahaprabhu asked him, he said, "Oh, Brahmin, what is it you're reading?" Now the Brahmin could understand that Mahaprabhu's not teasing here. He's sincerely said, "Well, I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita." He said, "But you can't read, you're illiterate." "Yes, but my guru has told me every day I should read Bhagavad Gita." So I'm holding it in every day looking at the pages. And what are you thinking? Oh, when I see the pages, I think how wonderful it is that Krishna has become the chariot driver for Arjuna, and Arjuna is accepting his instructions. Mahaprabhu embraced him and said, you're understanding Bhagavad Gita. These other people, they don't understand. You truly understand. So this was the point that Mahaprabhu made no restriction. In the same way, Narottam very freely gave Krishna consciousness. Narottam and Ramchandra Kaviraj were walking one day and they saw two young men, about the age of these boys running around here, herding some goats, some buffalo, you know. Now they could understand from the calendar wise, it was Kali Puja time. They could understand what this meant with these boys. So they decided to walk just a little bit within their earshot and discuss amongst themselves, you know, and talk about, you know, the demigod worship and sacrificing animals, and Ramchandra would counter that with yes, and these people don't understand that they're not pleasing, you know, back and forth. And these boys, they heard. They were simple-hearted boys from a Brahmin family, although Brahmins in the Shakti path, their father was a big, big worshiper of Shakti Dev. So at any rate, they spoke like this with the purpose of delivering these boys. So these boys were not Vaishnavas by any stretch of the imagination, but nonetheless, by coming in contact with Narottam, they got delivered. So this is the sincere follower of Lord Gauranga Dev. Now, emanating a shower of nectar of the holy name from his mouth. Now, quite commonly we emanate so many things from our mouths, you know. Some of the people I work with, the foods that they eat cause particular smells to emanate from their mouth when you happen to be too close to them, and it isn't very pleasant. And what to speak of, third canto of the Bhagavatam describes Grumya-kata, Kukata, bad words that kill the intelligence. This is what emanates from people's mouths, you know. Especially nowadays with things going on in this country and everybody has an opinion and talking and this and that and so much stuff there. But emanating from the mouth of Narottam is the nectar of the holy name. We know that what is it, Chaitanya says, Rupa Goswami says, I can't understand how much nectar there is in these two syllables, Krishna. So much bliss is there. And so that is what's emanating from Narottam's mouth, coming out very, very wonderfully and satisfying to everyone. And how is it described? As the moon that destroys the darkness of ignorance. And right now we've got the full moon. Purnima was just yesterday, and I was going out in the backyard for something, I think to turn the light out in Tulsi's greenhouse or something. I was just amazed. It's, you know, my wife always says, you want me to turn the light on for it? No, I don't need the light. There's so much light out here, you know. So when the moon is present, all the darkness is gone. So also recently, there's been some very amazing constellations in the sky, some alignment of different planets and stars. But they say you have to have it really dark to see, because in the darkness, you can then see something very bright. But if there's too much light, you can't see it. So this darkness of Kali Yuga is there. So stepping out of that darkness is possible by this emanating moon-like nectar coming from Narottam, which is the holy name. As we know, the holy name is what brings us out of the darkness. Bhagavatam is described as the shining lamp in this age of darkness. So like this, he starts off this wonderful prayer here, glorifying Narottam. The second verse. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Narottam Das Thakur. Blissful by singing Krishna's glories, he would become bathed in the streams of perspiration, and the splendor of his teeth and his gentle smile would illuminate in all directions. Now in this verse, he focuses on two things: the sound vibration coming from Narottam and the beauty of his own form, the beauty of his appearance, the blissful singing of Krishna's glories. Kirtan is not defined by how expert someone sings, by how expert their mridanga playing is. by how expert their harmonium playing is. Now, if that happens to be very good, that's nice, it adds to it. The story is often cited that Bhaktisiddhanta would quite regularly call upon the worst kirtan singer by normal standards, with the most unappealing voice, he lead the kirtan, to make the point that the sound of the holy name is what should be accepted. So, blissful by singing Krishna's glories. Not only is Narottam blissful by singing these glories, but we become blissful by hearing them. So this spiritual bliss is going two ways there, you know. And in that singing of the glories of the holy name, he would become bathed in streams of perspiration. Now, the perspiration of Narottam is glorified. And sometimes in the summertime, I'd really get into the yard work. And, you know, I'd come in and my wife's like, oh, God, you stink, go take a shower. Because so much perspiration has been there from all of this. And it's not very pleasant. But Narottam, his perspiration is glorified because it's due to his completely absorbing himself to the point of ecstasy in the chanting. And the splendor of his teeth and gentle smile would illuminate all directions. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, describes different types of smiling. There's this smiling. There's this smiling. And there's this smiling, showing the teeth very much. And this is considered the best smiling. So his smile was definitely that, what is it, I forget the Sanskrit right now, but this smile illuminates everyone. Everyone would be so satisfied seeing him. You see someone that's very happy, oh, I want a part of that. I want to be involved in that, you know. So, and, you know, sometimes we see pictures of people from previous times, particularly here in the early West, and their teeth are not necessarily very attractive. You know, what one or two of them they may have. So, but the glory of the smile and teeth of Narottam in and of themselves were very beautiful. Many times in describing the 64 characters of a Mahapurush, one of them is beautiful smiling teeth, very effulgent teeth, you know. So in this way, the second verse of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the glorification of activities related to the body that maybe in everyone may not be so uplifting, but in the case of Narottam, very, very satisfying. And this third verse is quite nice. Mridanga nama shutimat chantat padmad bhuja dvanva manoharaya sandhya sammujat pulakas tasmai namo namah Srila Narottamaya. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Narottam Das Thakur. Hearing the mridangas and the sound of the holy name, he would dance, moving his enchanting lotus feet, and the hairs on his body remained erect in ecstasy. This is one of those wonderful things when maybe you're at a work scenario and there's a Harinam party nearby, or you're trying to find the devotees, and then you hear the Mridanga, oh, there's the holy name. You know that you're arriving, you're coming to that place. So the sound of the Mridangas was so satisfying to him because he knew it was not just Mridanga playing. I remember being with Madhava on a number of occasions, Kirtan Madhava, and there'd be a Mridanga player in the assembly just playing like anything, not chanting at all. And Madhava would tell them, we can train a monkey to play the mridanga. We can't train a monkey to chant the holy name. So chant. So he would always encourage like that, you know. He has an ability due to his own nature to speak what might be a little harsh, but very direct and encouraging at the same time. So then that person would take up the chanting and he would be very happy and indicate to them like that. So whenever we hear the mridanga, we know that accompanying the mridanga is the sound of the holy name. There's always the satisfaction of hearing both of them together. And what would Narottam do when he heard that? He would dance. You know, sometimes, many years ago when I was a younger person, there was a show on television called American Bandstand. The American Bandstand was hosted by one young Dick Clark, who's gone on to other things in other lives now. But they would play the local music and the kids would all dance. And then they would introduce a new song. And so they would have a panel of 3 judges. So they'd play the new song by whoever the latest groups was, the Turtles or the Strawberry Alarm Clock or whatever. And so then they would rate it. Well, I give it a 75. It had a good beat and you could dance to it. You know, like that. So this is what happens when we hear music, we want to dance. Oh, it's not good music. You couldn't dance to it. You couldn't move to it. So, but here we see that when Narottam heard the mridangos playing and heard the sound of the holy name, he immediately wanted to dance. This is the end result of hearing the holy name. I was in Chicago in 1975, and it was at a time where the devotees, I mean, we were almost all brahmacharis. There were like 100 brahmacharis at that time. Our Prabhupada initiated 100 brahmacharis. At any rate, so, you know, the devotees had this thing they were doing, you know? And you hear it on the recording. Prabhupada stops the kirtan. Now, nobody had ever seen Prabhupada stop a Guru Puja kirtan. And he looked at all the devotees, he said, what is this business? And he wiggled himself on the Vyasasana. He said, you see the Panchatattva, their hands are raised. And the reason I thought of this, I'm looking at this beautiful picture of the Panchatattva, and their hands are all up like this. He said, this is how you dance in kirtan. Well, the next day, there were 100 brahmacharis with their hands in the air dancing. So the point is that the hearing of the mridanga of the holy name makes one want to dance. And that dancing becomes very ecstatic. And what happens when you dance? You move your feet. I remember also in 1976, I was on Radha Damodar, and we stopped in at the Philly Temple. And the Philly Temple at the time was mostly householders, and the morning program was pretty much, and we were all young, fired up brahmacharis. So we started dancing, running up and down, back and forth in the temple, and they hadn't seen anything like this in years. So the point is that this dancing means you move your feet. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes, he's not just moving his feet, he's got lotus feet. He's got lotus feet. These feet of Narottam, they're so worshipable. And when he's dancing like that and moving his feet very ecstatically, the hairs on his body stand up on end. In English language, this is called horripilation. We've all experienced it. We call it goosebumps in common word. You get, oh, look, I'm getting goosebumps telling us, you know, like that. So horripilation. So the standing of the hairs on end, this is a symptom of ecstasy in this regard. You know, so these are the glorifications that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving here of Narottam Das Thakur and of his activities. Not just to sit in front of someone and say, somebody, oh, he did this and he has this degree and he went to this school and we'd like you to now welcome, you know, who has 10 master's degrees. No, but describing the characteristics associated with the activities of Narottam. This is what gives the fullness to it. So that's 3 verses. We said we were going to do 3, 3, 3. So, you should do Abhishek now. Or what do
Just can you go?
thakur Narottam Premavati Maharaj Premamukita-muni Bhushana Bhava Boli Angahi Anga Viraja Premamukita-muni Bhushana Bhava Boli Angahi Anga Viraja Nipayasana Kheturi Mahabhaijata Sangahi Bhakata Samaja Nipayasana Kheturi Mahabhaijata Sangahi Bhakata Samaja Sanatana Rupakrita Grantha Bhagavata অনুদিন করত বিচার সনাতন রূপকৃত গ্রন্থ ভাগবত অনুদিন করত বিচার সনাতন রূপকৃত গ্রন্থ ভাগবত অনুদিন করত বিচার সনাতন রূপকৃত গ্রন্থ ভাগবত অনুদিন করত বিচার রাধা মাধব যুগল উজ্জ্বল রস পরমানন্দ সুখ সার রাধা মাধব যুগল উজ্জ্বল রস পরমানন্দ সুখ সার শ্রী সংকীর্তন বিষয় রসে উন্মত ধর্মাধর্ম নাহি জান শ্রী সংকীর্তন বিষয় রসে উন্মত ধর্মাধর্ম নাহি জান যোগদান ব্রত আদি ভয়ে ভাগত রয়ত করম জ্ঞান যোগদান ব্রত আদি ভয়ে ভাগত রয়ত করম জ্ঞান ভাগবত শাস্ত্রগণ যোদে ভকতি ধন তাক গৌরব করুয়াপ ভাগবত শাস্ত্রগণ যোদে ভক্তি ধন তাক গৌরব করুয়াপ সাংখ্য মীমাংসক তর্কাদিক যত কম্পিত দেখি পরতাপ সাংখ্য মীমাংসক তর্কাদিক যত কম্পিত দেখি পরতাপ অভক্ত চোর দুরহি ভাগীরহু নিয়রে নাহি পরকাশ অভক্ত চোর দুরহি ভাগীরহু নিয়রে নাহি পরকাশ দীনহীন জনে দেয়ল ভক্তি দনে বঞ্চিত গোবিন্দ দাস দীনহীন জনে দেয়ল ভক্তি ধনে বঞ্চিত গোবিন্দ দাস জয় রে জয় ঠাকুর নরোত্তম প্রেম ভক্তি মহারাজ জয় রে জয় ঠাকুর নরোত্তম প্রেম ভক্তি মহারাজ যাকর মন্ত্রী অভিন্ন কলে বড় রামচন্দ্র কবিরাজ যাকর মন্ত্রী অভিন্ন কলে বড় রামচন্দ্র কবিরাজ জয় ঠাকুর মহাশয় 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 জয় ঠাকুর জয় নরোত্তম 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 ঠাকুর. Read quickly the translation. All glories to Thakur Narottam, the great king of loving devotion, whose counselor was Ramchandra Kaviraj, who was non-different from him. His prema was the crown jewel of all the ornamental symptoms of ecstasy he showed on his body. He sat on the throne of the kingdom of Kheturi in the company of his assembled devotees.
Every day we discuss the theistic scriptures compiled by Sri Sanatana and Rupa Goswami, which contain the splendid amorous flavors of Sri Radha and Madhava, and that are the essence of topmost ecstasy. In the ecstasy of Sri Sankirtan, he did not know what was pious and what was impious. Yoga, charity, vows, and other kinds of piety fled far away, while primitive activities and non-dualistic knowledge were weakened.
He upheld the honor of those theistic scriptures that bestow the treasure of devotion. And when they saw his might, Sankhya, Mimamsaka, Tarka, and other speculative philosophies trembled. The thief-like non-devotees fled far away, unable to shine their light in his vicinity. He gave the treasure of devotion to lowly and fallen fellows, and Govinda Das covets the same.
You chant one more bhajan. Mata's teacher.
Gauranga Bodhite Have Pulakashira Bodhihari Bodhite Ane Bhavira
Gauranga Bodhite সংসার বাসনা মোরা কবে তুচ্ছ হবে সংসার বাসনা যায় চাঁদের করুণা হইবে সংসার বাসনা মোর কবে তুচ্ছ হবে বিষয়া ছাড়িয়া তবে শুদ্ধ হবে মানা কবে মহেন্দ্র শ্রী বৃন্দাবন বিষয়া ছাড়িয়া তবে শুদ্ধ হবে মানা কবে মহেন্দ্র শ্রী বৃন্দাবন কবে হাম বুঝাবো সে যুগল প্রীতি কবে হাম বুঝাবো সে যুগল প্রীতি গুণা পদে রহু মোর রাজা প্রার্থনা কর সদা নরোত্তম দাস রঘুনাথ পদে রহু মোর আশ প্রার্থনা কর সদা নরোত্তম দাস গৌরাঙ্গ বলিতে হবে পুনঃ শরীর হরি হরি বলিতে নয়নে ভাবে লীলা বলিতে হবে পুলকা শরীরা হরি হরি বলিতে নয়নে ভরে নীরা।
জয়
Oh, please,
The whole reading or Abhishek?
more reading.
Okay.
You want to do Abhishek?
I'm your servant. This is your program. I'm just a guest. However you all want to do it.
Okay, Prabhu, Abhishek. Let's start.
Okay.
Bhagavati Mata General.
We have to offer it.